because this wasn't a race of boats, it was a race of... If someone had said to me, interview style like this, you know, what sort of leader are you being right now? Particularly as a leader, you cast this massive shadow. If that hadn't have happened, we might not have... We had big, catastrophic, you know, disaster at sea. Tonight is when it gets real. And someone else is going to pay the butcher's bill. Biggest, most fierce weather any of us have seen at sea. When you have to perform and you feel that pressure, I made a mistake. That was quite a heart-wrenching moment. If you want a risk-free life, you just don't do this. I remember feeling this real deep fear. I'm not doing that. I refuse. It wasn't a piece of their boat that got broken. It was somebody on board. But it wasn't just anybody. He wasn't forced, but he was, you know, I don't know, maybe given an ultimatum. Moments like that, you really feel the threat. Yeah, that was a real moment of reckoning. A search and rescue plane was, the whole boat was hit side on by a big wave and rolled right upside down. The boy stepped on the boat and the man stepped off, if you like. Oh, that's a funny one, yeah.
So Brendan, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time today. I first engaged with you when I met you at an event.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that you speak about this race that you embarked on. Tell us a bit more about that.
So my small claim to fame is that I am the winning skipper of something called the Clipper Round the World Yacht Race, which is a race around the world, a sailing boat race around the world. And the thing that's really unique about it is it's the world's only round the world race for non-professional sailors. So you don't have to be a super experienced professional sailor. Anyone can sign up for this race. And it takes 11 months to circumnavigate the world. It's raced on identical sailing boats. And yeah, I was the leader of one of the teams. I was a professional sailor. So I was put in charge of one of these boats called Spirit of Australia. And it took us 11 months to sail around the world. And my team and I, we won this race by a huge margin. And so we didn't win it because we were better sailors or we had better equipment. We won it because we were the team that did the high-performing teamwork stuff the best. Because this wasn't a race of boats, it was a race of teams.
What kind of life events shape a person to want to compete in the Clipper race around the world on the oceans? Tell me a bit more about the backstory.
Well, the backstory. So I wish I had a better backstory. So it'd be lovely, sort of salt in my veins, you know, childhood sailor, you know. But no. So I did high school, very middle of the road academically. Finished that. I was in the I'm Australian, by the way. I can turn the accent back up whenever I have to. But been in here about 20 years now in the UK. I finished high school. I was in the army for a couple of years after that. Terrible soldier, couldn't hit the side of the barn with a gun, just awful. But interesting life lessons. I was outside working with my hands, left the army, and then I was worked in the world of IT, help desk support back in the days of dial-up internet. So the sound of connecting those old modems, just go in 24 hours a day. Decided pretty quick that wasn't my cup of tea and wanted to be back outside, physical type of work, and decided to become a professional sailor. And that's what prompted me to move from Australia to the UK. And I went and did a yacht master course at a sailing school down in the Isle of Wight and became a professional sailor and started doing, you know, work delivering brand new sailing boats from the factories where they're built to the people who buy them. So sailing across the Atlantic just time after time. And I tell you, I got called out as part of my yacht master training. I did a passage in the Mediterranean where you do get some like really fearsome weather. And we were on a big boat. And it was a force 10. So it was, you know, it was really serious conditions and the boat being thrown around. And the skipper, she was amazing. She was so on it, so in control and just, yeah, I mean, exceptional skipper. And in that moment, just seeing her like that, I went, I want to do that. I want to be like her. And then I found out she'd done this thing called the Clipper race. And I just said to her, look, can you like put in a good word for me? So I joined the Clipper race organization just as a, you know, dog's body doing the maintenance and, you know, scraping the floorboards, and then worked my way up in there to become a mate and then eventually a skipper. And I tried out to skipper the round the world race one time and didn't quite get it the first time, and then went for it again 2 years later and got it.
Okay. So that first time you done it, where you didn't succeed the first time. What were the difficulties that you faced that hindered you from winning that competition or completing it?
Well, I didn't even get in.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood.
So the way it works is that, they put a call out. We're recruiting for 10 skippers to, skipper our boats in this round the world race. And there's a huge number of applicants. I think there were 160 applicants. And then over the course of interviews and sea trials and all, they sort of whittle that number down to, the 10 finalists, if you like. So the first time I went, partway through the process, and they just said, look, still need a bit more experience, you're a bit young, and, come back, give it another shot in a couple of years. So I did, and got through the second time, but that just gets you one of the 10 jobs, and then you got to go and do the race. And well, my goal was always to win it, but yeah, just to get in was a big achievement.
Fantastic. So the period of time where you actually started the training with Yachtmaster to actually competing in that first competition that you competed in, what was that duration?
That was about 4.5 years.
4.5 years.
4.5 years. So, I mean, when I skippered the race, and I'm not the youngest person ever to have skippered the race, but I was the youngest of my group of 10 that was selected. So yeah, it was a lot of responsibility to put onto someone, and I think you get a flush of confidence. I think in your late 20s, where you I don't know, you just know how the world works, and then you maybe get a bit older and have some kids, and you realize, I don't know quite as much as I thought I did. I think there's a humility that sort of settles upon us. I didn't think that was a lot of responsibility at all. I can fully handle this, and I was right, and I did it. I'd probably approach it with a far greater appreciation of the risks involved now, just with some kids of my own.
Where do you think that confidence came from, where you've had so much confidence that you could compete in this competition? Did it come from the army? Did it come from other, or do you think you've always just been confident and optimistic? Because that's quite a feat to achieve, isn't it?
I've always sort of, have a go and sort of throw myself into every challenge. And I think I've always been able to outwork other people. Not the brightest or most academic kind of person, but I think sort of persistent and just never really give up. Once I've got a goal I can, work towards and set my mind on, that's it. I'm getting it, or I'm going to sort of die trying. So that was that was it. To get the clipper race. And I suppose I could have bounced onto something else, but I really, really wanted it. And then that carried through. And I think there's a certain belief when you really believe something is possible and you can do it. You just notice and you see opportunities to move that forward. But if you think, I don't know if I'm capable, I don't think I can, or I don't know. If you don't believe you can do it, then you'll just sort of see roadblocks, and there'll be opportunities to sort of take an off ramp. So yeah, I'd say just sticking with it.
Okay, so tell us about the race itself.
So I mean, probably should tell you a little bit about the race. So it's a sailing race around the world. Firstly, it's on identical boats, which is really important for sailors. So everyone's got the same kit, the same resources, and even the sponsors that sponsor these different boats, they're not allowed to buy anything for their boat or their team that would increase performance. So it's level playing field, even Stevens.
And how many boats are there?
There's 10. There's 10 identical boats. And the other unique thing about this race is that anyone can sign up for it. It's the world's only round the world race for non-professional sailors. So right now you could get your phone out, download an application form. Having never sailed before in your life, you've got to come down to Portsmouth, where the sort of HQ of this whole thing is, and do 6 weeks of intensive training. And it is, very intense.
Full time?
Yeah, it's in 1 week long blocks.
Okay.
Yeah, 6. And you do that, and then you can go and race around the world, having never sailed before in your life. So yeah, that's it. You've got a huge spread demographically. On my crew, for instance, youngest was 17, just left school. Oldest was 63, recently had a hip replacement. 60-40 split of men to women. I'm happy to say it's more like 50-50 now. And just all range of ages, professions, 27 nationalities. So, it's a very diverse bunch of people, but just ordinary people off the street. Not SAS commandos, not, and people with just, amazing people to even just sign up for this, because they've got to pay a fee to get on the race. It's not free.
Which is how much, roughly speaking?
don't quote me. It's probably around 50 for the whole thing. But the race is broken into 7 or 8 shorter stages, so you can just sign up for one of the shorter stages.
Right. Okay.
But even if you only do a short stage, you've still got to do all of the training. So it's a big investment of time for the training, as well as even if you're only doing one leg of the race. There have been fatalities on this thing. There's real risk.
What do you observe compels those people to even want to participate in this?
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because I mean, I think a lot of people maybe look at the race and just go, "What is wrong with their sense of self-preservation?" What, they asked Edmund Hillary, right, who's the first person to climb Mount Everest, why did you do it? Why did you embark on this crazy expedition? And he just said, because it's there. I think there's something sort of quite profound in that we want to do things in life that, I don't know, just sort of give it meaning. And I think a lot of people, I mean, there's all different motivations. There were a few themes, though, I'd say. For some of my team, there was a sense that, not they're running out of time, but like, I'm not going to live forever and I'm not going to have my health forever.
That's what I was thinking. I was wondering, is it a bucket list thing?
I think for a lot of people it is. Yeah, and certainly even either themselves or perhaps a friend or a family member have had a health scare, or some reminder that we've got to do these things while we're healthy and we're able to. So yeah, others, I had one guy who was there to win. He said second place, the first loser. So just hyper competitive personality. I had someone else who was on the race who said they were there to try and meet a romantic part. Well, and everything else in between. So from all that, you've got to put together a culture and a team ethos and a way of working that sort of ticks most of the boxes for most of the people. You can't give everybody exactly what they want, but yeah, pull all those different people, different personalities and different motivations and sort of aim them at this one goal of, well, for us, it was about winning, that was always the goal from the start, and, maintain that through all the adversity and challenges that we faced.
Brendan, I am curious, only because I've got a son who's 16.
Yeah, right.
That 17-year-old that participated.
Yeah.
Do you know what motivated him to want to participate?
Oh, that's a funny one. Yeah, no, he wasn't forced, but he was, I don't know, maybe given an ultimatum by a family member who wanted to, send him away for some life experience. And
well, that would have been good for him, right? In some ways, I mean, in a lot of ways, I would imagine.
It was
character building.
He sort of he joined us. The boy stepped on the boat and the man stepped off, if you like. Yeah, so that was an incredible experience. I think it's sort of to be shaped by that in those formative years was just incredible.
And then how did you overcome the language barriers between the people that were on board?
Well, it wasn't really an issue. So that is one of the conditions of the race, is you have to have, not English as first language, but, total fluency, because everyone has to be able to communicate. So yeah, my boat had a sort of, I'd say about half of the people that sign up globally are Brits. It's a very UK centric, the organization's based here. They're not advertising here. So yeah, it's large, the majority is UK. And then people sort of come from elsewhere, but yeah, English have to be proficient. So my boat being Spirit of Australia, our crew was split kind of half Brit, most of the rest were Aussies, and then a bunch of others.
Okay.
The sort of Anglophone world, yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. So tell me about the voyage itself. What time of year is it? What was your voyage like?
So we left the UK in September, and we sail out the Channel, and the route that it goes around the world goes from the UK to Rio de Janeiro, and then back across the South Atlantic to Cape Town, and then through the Southern Ocean to Australia, and then north through Asia to Qingdao in northern China, and then across the Pacific, that's the big one, to the United States, and then we go south. And rather going right round the bottom of South America, around Cape Horn, we take a little shortcut, go through the Panama Canal, and then you're in the Caribbean, sail back up, hit Canada, and then back across to the UK. So that's the route. It takes 11 months to do that circumnavigation. It's about 40,000 miles, and it's broken into 8 stages, with a points tally. So that's how you know who wins. So yeah, we set off from the UK, we sail out the Channel, we sail down the Atlantic, and yeah, I would say we had our first big issue on the race probably about 20 days in. So we'd crossed the equator. We're in the southeast trade winds. We're heading towards Rio, and I'd set a big goal before the race, about how we would perform and how we'd sail and how we'd work together. And we're about 20 days in, and we're just kind of not measuring up to the expectation that we've set. And it's easy to say these things like, "Oh, gee, this is a marathon, not a sprint. It's about building trust and building a foundation and all that." But when you have to perform and you feel that pressure, I made a mistake. I let my emotional state and my attitude get too closely coupled to the performance metrics of the boat.
Explain that to me.
When you're out there sailing, you can't see each other. Very quickly, when you're out at sea,
as in the boats,
you can't.
Yeah.
So your visible horizon when you're standing on the deck of one of these things is about 10 miles circle around you. So very quickly, the boats separate. You're out of sight of each other. And the way you know how you're doing in the race is you get an email every 6 hours, a position report that tells you how you're doing versus the 9 other rivals. And we'd put the numbers into the spreadsheet, and it either show sort of red or green, and the green for sort of good, we've made miles, we've advanced, red, the opposite. And so every 6 hours, this little sort of ritual, everyone gather around the computer and we'd see it come in. If the numbers showed up green, we'd all celebrate, cheer, celebrate every little win that we get. I'd go up on deck, share the great news with the team, and, give some training and some empowerment and, in that enthusiasm. But then 6 hours later, all the numbers show up red. I'd immediately I'd sit there and get really angry, just sort of in my own head. And I'd go up on deck and immediately start taking control of everything back. And so it was this real sort of, I trust you team to kind of do the right things when times are good and sort of we're getting the results. But the minute that starts to slip, it was, the control freak kind of comes back out. And I'd trim all the sails myself, and and so the crew were left in this position where they didn't know which one of these two quite different personas was going to emerge every 6 hours. So, we've all got our ups and downs, but it's on this massively compressed time cycle. And here's the thing, and this was my big learning afterwards, was it was a behavior that was in the blind spot. And we've all got them, as leaders, I think. I was ripping apart the fabric of the team, and I couldn't see it. And honestly, if someone had said to me, interview style like this, what sort of leader are you being right now? So I could have, well, it's all about having standards and setting high performance goals, targets for ourselves. And when we're achieving those numbers, we want to celebrate that. But when we're not meeting that, we've got to, communicate that and show people, lead from the front. We've got to close the delta. But it's mental gymnastics, it's creative self-justification. But yeah, I couldn't really see it. But the crew were in this position where they've got this really emotionally volatile leader kind of every day they're going through this world of massive change, and they're the amateurs. I'm the professional. I needed to be like that rock at the center of the team, right? And I was just every day adding more change onto the pile. But yeah, this carried on for about 20 days with these pendulum swings getting worse and worse. And they ended up having a bit of a mutiny. They had a meeting without me, talked about this behavior and how it was making them feel and how morale feels like it's coming down. And they brought it to my attention, and that was pretty hard to hear that feedback. But here's the thing, you can't call a timeout and get off the boat. You can't escape. So, but what I reflected on it, and it was, I had to understand that, particularly as a leader, you cast this massive shadow over the people around you, and you can't turn it off, and they live in it. And so, if you're up, it brings other people up. When you're down, it'll bring other people down as well. And whilst you can't be, emotionless android, in the middle all the time, but there's a tension, I think, in leadership between your authentic self and how you're really feeling inside, and almost that role play of what your team need to see from you. And for me, it was about just sort of keeping the emotional swings in a sort of smaller, sine wave, if you like. And once I did that, and the phrase, the way they said it to me was, yeah, you cast this big shadow. Or the way I wrote it down for myself was, your mood equals their mood. Your attitude equals their attitude. Just as a reminder to me of that presence that you have, and how you've got to manage that, and manage that energy and manage that attitude, because it's, as a leader particularly, it's so infectious. Yeah. What you feel, the attitude that you project will become that of your team.
having good self-state management, so you're not polluting the rest of the team. And yeah. So what was the feedback that you were getting? Was it just that you're casting this big shadow? What was the feedback you were getting from the team in terms of how they were feeling when you were swinging from one side to the other?
They said, yeah, we just don't. And to be honest, they've all paid money to be here, right? It's just we expect more from you, and we didn't get a sense of this before the race, and this behavior is all new. And they just said it was, this kind of isn't really acceptable. Now, they didn't all sort of gather me and have like an intervention. It was one person who spoke on behalf of. So it was delivered tactfully, but even well-intentioned constructive criticism is never a nice thing to hear. But yeah, I tell you, it was going through that and the reflection on it, and the actions I took as a result of that. I think if that hadn't have happened, we might not have won the race. And there were other teams who had this problem, where they kind of let their skipper get away with behaviors that they would have probably liked to have changed, but didn't challenge. And yeah, I think that had a big result in the end.
So how long did it take you to course correct from when they gave you that feedback to say, okay, I need to sort myself out? You got back into being the leader that you believe that you should have been in that situation. How was that? Was there any lag time, or was that pretty immediate?
Well, I tell you, when I sit on a train, sometimes you look out the window and you go back to moments. I think how I should have handled it. I'd like to think I'd handle it now. Where you call an all crew meeting, you say you've given this feedback, I've taken it on board. I mean, here's what I'm going to change. Hold me accountable to these things, and everyone sort of applauds and says, "Oh, such maturity. We were clearly wrong about you. The fault was actually ours," and we all like hug it out. I didn't handle it that well. I'll be honest.
On board.
Yeah. In the real world, I kind of withdrew from the team.
For how long?
5 days, probably.
5 days until.
I mean, I didn't like lock myself in my room and not come out already.
But just maybe ruminating on it and letting it bother you. And
again, we're all brilliant and very capable of telling ourselves stories. Turning ourselves into the victim. And actually, this feels really unfair. They're ganging up on me. That can become the inner monologue. I didn't abdicate any responsibility. Still on deck, ensuring safety and performance and all the stuff you'd say was on my job description. But I suppose the voluntary, the coaching, the mentoring, just building strong relationships with people. People feeling like you really care about them and that you engage with them, you want to understand them a bit more and understand what they want to get out of this experience. Just forgot about that. I just withdrew, I suppose, into my personal safe zone, psychologically speaking, I suppose, which was at that time, sat in front of the computer on the boat. There's a lot of Excel spreadsheets, a lot of data analysis, a lot of weather routing and these software, things. And I sort of just really absorbed myself in that, justifiably so. But it kind of had the benefit of not really having to engage with anyone unless they came and sort of sat on the little bench seat next to me and started a conversation.
When you snapped out of it, what led you to snapping out of it? What was the thought? What was the aha moment, the insight, the motivation for you to say, okay, I need to snap out of this and get back to doing leading this in a more effective way?
Well, we finished the race. So we finished in Rio de Janeiro. This was quite close to the end.
Okay.
So we naturally came into port, and I had a little feedback session with some members of the team who again sort of reiterated, we need to see some change moving forward from here. And I realized I'd kind of a huge amount of trust. Team. That was a word that came up in some of the feedback sessions, because the way I'd behaved, it had given some other people on board a bit of a license to give voice to their own emotional excesses. And yeah, I think I needed to course correct there. So I found something called the trust equation. So it's sort of it's a really well verified sort of thing. But it frames the concept of trust, which we often just have a gut feel about, right? It's not something that we know when we've got it, we know when it's lost, but it's hard to articulate exactly what it is. But it just gives a little bit of a formula, like a mathematical thing. So it's trust was credibility, which I think, I tick. People trust you, the knowledge, expertise, ability to execute. Plus reliability, which is do you do what you say you're going to do? When you make a promise, is your word good? I think, I'd let myself down a little bit there, set a great expectation before the race, all these values and blah, blah, blah. And then the minute you get the performance pressure, that all goes out the window. And the final one is intimacy, which is just getting to know somebody. You reveal a little bit more about yourself. I do the same, and a meaningful relationship grows. And that's the bit I sort of, offloaded when I just became fixated on the numbers. And all those things are divided by something else, which the formula for the trust equation is self-orientation. But I think I prefer to sort of say it as selfishness or self-centeredness. But if people think you're just doing something because it benefits you, and you're not considering the ramifications on how it affects other people, you're putting yourself before the group, then even if you do all the, credibility, you do that stuff well, people will always question if your motivations aren't correct. And so, yeah, that really helped me look at why there was this trust deficit and what to do to address it. And yeah, so I, some red wine and soul searching in Rio, but bounced back, and I addressed this at our pre-race briefing before the next leg, and said, look, giving this feedback, I'm going to take it on board. Here's what I'm going to change. And yeah, they could tell that, I was saying all the right things, at least. Whether I'd follow through on them would be another matter. But yeah, they were happy to sort of, okay, well, let's turn over a new leaf and crack on.
Okay. And what was the major change that you would have noticed thereafter? And I say major because I can imagine from situation 1 to situation 2, that would have been a significant change after that conversation.
Yeah. I think, it was understanding the mood shadow, I called it. And just to understand from there on that I needed to be, the way I said it was the sort of steady hand on the tiller, rock at the center of the team. Not get too high when things are going great, and not get too down when things are really down. Just try as much as I can to always pull people back towards a sort of the middle ground where they can perform. They know what's, you're creating clarity. They just, there's no surprises, and whatever else is going on around them, they can depend on you to be acting and behaving in a really consistent way.
How did that show up with the performance of the race, sir?
Yeah, well, long term, really well. So we won the race in the end by a huge margin, one of the largest it's ever been won by in its history. The next leg of the race to Cape Town didn't go so well. We had a big catastrophic, disaster at sea, big accident. No injuries, thankfully, but, lots of damaged equipment, big boat breakage. So we felt like we'd turned a corner. We're setting out again in this new...
Tell me a bit more about that. I need to understand that, because that sounds horrific to me, right? I don't like the open ocean. Yeah. It freaks me out, okay? Right. So when you tell me that, I'm thinking, oh my God, what happened? Yeah, so tell me more.
Thalassophobia, it's called. So that's the fear of deep water. You're all right at the beach, but when...
Yeah.
I do. There you go. So... Yeah, it was 20 days from Rio to Cape Town. And the fastest way to get there isn't to sort of take the direct line across, is to head south. You head into the Southern Ocean and use the big weather systems that sort of spin around the bottom of the globe. You hook into them and they sort of catapult you eastward. So we were 10 days in, and we had our first big catastrophe at sea. So basically we had too much sail up. So you've always got a decision on sailing, but it's how much sail you have up. And the idea is that when there's very little wind, you have it all up. And then as the wind progressively builds, you pull down your sails and replace the bigger sails with smaller ones. So you've always got the right amount of power. But you can kind of delay changing down to smaller sails. And you'll be going fast. You'll be going fast. But it's called you're overpowered, you're overpressed. Well, when you, in terms of how we normally commute around in cars, it doesn't sound that fast. But when you're on one of these boats doing 18, 20, 25 knots, which is miles per hour, 25 miles per hour, you're absolutely going for it. The thing weighs 32 tons, so you're moving fast. And yeah, we were overpressed, overpowered. So we had too much sail up for the amount of wind that we were in. So we've dialed the risk up. If our risk were on a dial, we've turned it from a 5 where it normally was. We're at about an 8 now. But yeah, we should have changed to our smaller set of sails an hour ago. But we're just making so many miles here. We're on rails. We're going for it. And so you just think, well, look, if we can hold this for another hour, another couple of hours, and then we'll change down to the smaller sails. But you dial up the risk, you're on the knife edge. And what happened, right? This Middle of the night, black night, pitch black out there, huge waves, the boat's surfing down. Only our best helmsman can steer the boat now because of the weight in the steering wheel.
So how far out can you see?
And you can't see anything. All you can see is the little compass, a little steering compass that sits right in front of the steering wheel. And you're there and you're steering by the wind instrument, and you're steering by this compass and just trying to, the feel of the waves. And the little LED light that illuminates this compass, 5 pence, winks out, fails. And suddenly, that's just, you're steering blind. And the helms person who was on the wheel at the time steered the boat the wrong way into a maneuver where the boat sort of slams over onto its side. The boom, which sort of is that big piece of metal underneath the mainsail, it swings across the boat. 400-kilo piece of alloy slams into the other side. The boat pinned over in the water, sails ripped to shreds, people hanging from their safety tethers. I mean, it was all going wrong. Now, that probably would have happened regardless if this little thing failed, but because we had way more sail up than we should have done at that moment, it was sort of catastrophic. So yeah, thankfully, touch wood, there were no injuries, but yeah, it was, I never forget, I was on deck, I was standing at the back, the boat sort of leaning over in the water, and everyone's just holding on, and everyone's head torches came on, and all the little head torches sort of looked back at me. I'm stood there, and this is like crisis management moment, leadership time. How do you react? The just getting the crisis sorted and managed and everything sort of safely contained, and then the longer, I suppose, tail of this, which is we've got a ton of damaged stuff now, so we're going to be right off the pace. We're going to be losing race places, and yeah, basically we've pushed too hard, come unstuck, and broken a bunch of stuff.
When that happened, were the passengers, the people that were with you on deck, the crew?
Yeah, about half of them.
Are they harnessed on?
So yeah, where this race is a really highly regulated thing, and they go to every possible length to make sure it's safe, understanding the underlying risk that you can never avoid. Going out to sea, setting out to sea on these boats. If you want a risk-free life, you just don't do this. Out there, everyone has to wear life jackets, of course, all the time. And yeah, you have these tethers that you are always clipped onto the boat. So you're always attached. So yeah, there was no risk of people kind of becoming detached and flying off the boat and getting lost at sea. Everyone was still on board. But you can still, get hit with stuff, and there's all this stuff moving about, and these ropes are sort of banging, backwards and forwards. So it's a lot of risky things on board. But back to the story, I got the sort of thing contained, and honestly, I felt so guilty for, whilst it wasn't my fault per se, the actual accident, but I'd made the decision to delay changing down sails. So the reason we were way overpowered was my call. And here was the mistake I made. It was in the aftermath of it. The next day, sun had come up, and we're limping along now. And our mainsail, which is the big sail, you've only got one of them, so you can't take it down and repair it. You've got to sort of try and fix it in situ. It had this big split up it, and rather than put together a plan and delegate a bunch of my team to go and repair this sail, I went up and with one other crew member repaired it myself. And I think it was partly to assuage the guilt I felt for almost having caused this catastrophe. But meanwhile, the rest of them are on deck. They're not really sure how we're going. I'm not doing that sort of post-crisis just management of just steadying the ship. And again, it wasn't the sort of control freak in me, but it was, I think, a need to show that, and the way I justified it at the time was, well, I'm not going to ask anyone else to go up and do this repair if I'm not prepared to, lead from the front and all that stuff. But really, where I needed to be was on the ground, making sure the well-being of the team was being looked after, creating clarity about what the plan is, how we're going to get over this, this setback, and how the work up there. It wasn't something that needed my, specialist skills to do. It was fairly simple, sort of repair work. But yeah, that was fed back afterwards. That that's where we need you. We need your boots need to stay on the ground at the back of the boat, looking after everyone else, and we'll be there, putting things into action. But we limped on. We arrived in Cape Town in 7th place in the end. We repaired everything, and we set off. But it was sort of those painful lessons early on. And I think they were the things that we had to learn through bitter experience, but they set us up for huge success later on in the race.
My goodness. So that happened, this incident happened as you were approaching Rio de Janeiro?
Between Rio and Cape Town.
Right, okay. So after this incident,
yeah,
what happens next?
We set off from Cape Town back into the Southern Ocean, sailed to Australia, 2nd place. So great result, podium finish, no incidents, we arrived strong. From there we sailed north to Singapore and then Qingdao, 1st place. So we're really starting to gain some momentum on this thing. So we arrive in Qingdao, huge celebration. But I remember even as we celebrated the win, and it was fantastic, our thoughts returned to the future, and I remember feeling this real deep fear, because the next leg of the race was going to be the most dangerous of all, crossing the North Pacific Ocean. So thanks to Moana, the kids' movie, most people use, we're going to go sailing in the Pacific. That's the sort of scene they imagine. But it's not like that in the North Pacific. These huge weather systems, they sort of cross from Asia to the Americas, storm force, hurricane force winds, just crossing with great regularity. It's the dead of winter. So this was going to be the big one. And the one I was the most worried about. And the longest, so 35 days it would take non-stop. So yeah, we set off from Qingdao, a couple of weeks later, stop over, and we set off. And we're racing down the Yellow Sea, heading for the southern tip of Japan. And then we head round Takashima, and then we're out to the Pacific. And, it was about 700 miles into the Pacific from leaving Japan behind us.
And what's your next destination at this point?
San Francisco. First big storm. And one of our rivals in this race, one of the other boats, they had this, catastrophe like I described in the South Atlantic. But it wasn't a piece of their boat that got broken. It was somebody on board. But it wasn't just anybody. It was their skipper.
What on earth happened to this?
So the boat, again, slammed over onto its side, decks awash, sails, 1 cubic meter of water is 1 metric ton, probably 3-4 tons crashing across the deck. It washed his leg up against a steel fitting and broke his leg. His lower leg, really broke, there were bones sticking through the skin. It was a real bad one. He was taken below by his team. He was sedated with morphine, his leg put in a splint. Japanese Coast Guard came and evacuated him and took him back to Japan for the treatment. And he's made a full recovery. But anyway, I'm getting told all this on the phone, told to stop racing. And our boat, my boat, was asked to turn around and go back and rendezvous with them. One of my team on this race was an accident emergency doctor. So she was going to be able to help them over the radio. And then the ask was that I would transfer from my boat onto this other boat and then skipper both boats in tandem the rest of the way across the North Pacific to San Francisco, still sort of 3.5 weeks away over there.
So now the objective isn't winning the race. Now the objective is getting everyone safe.
Yeah, they sort of assured me before, I went, they said, look, so firstly, when you're out at sea, when someone's in trouble, racing is a secondary priority. So don't worry about that. We'll make things right. There'll be some recompense for you. You're not going to lose your place in the race. Just we'll sort that all out later. But right now, it's about getting the injured guy evacuated and getting both boats safely across. So you're right. Racing at that moment was suspended for that little bit. So the rest of the fleet, the other boats, they race on ahead of us. They're unaffected by this little drama. But yeah, I had to transfer over from my boat onto this other one. And then with 2 teams in tandem, we'd sort of stay together within 15 miles so that we can always be in contact on our radios.
How did the crew respond when you told them that you need to board the other boat? Your original crew?
When I told them that, because here's the thing, when you, as a sea captain, your word is final, I suppose. You're the master of the vessel. So whatever your bosses and whoever ashore, they can't compel you to do anything that's against your best judgment. So they made this ask of me, said what the plan is. And but I could have said, nope, I am not doing that. I refuse. Would have had ramifications, when I did reach it, sure, of course. But if it went wrong, it's going to be me sat in front of the courtroom, essentially. If someone got hurt or killed, and they'd say, well, why did you make that decision? It's your call at the end of the day. So, I really felt that weight of what's the right thing to do here. I didn't put it to a vote with my team. I said, I reluctantly agreed after all the sort of thinking about it that I would make the transfer. I put one of my team in as acting skipper and got them on board. And then told people that this is the plan and I'm going on to this other boat.
And how did they respond?
All of them agreed. But I think people saw that, there's not many other options.
Do you think they didn't agree because they wanted to win or because they were fearful?
Well, I don't think everyone knew that, whatever happened, we weren't going to be racing for this section of the race because we'd already had to turn around and we were sort of out of the race for now. We'd get some sort of redress later on, but I was only going to be staying on this other boat for this leg. As soon as we arrived in port, they'd have a new skipper who's, and I'd rejoin my team. That was always the plan. It was just sort of, being there, sort of foster skipper for that small period. No, I think some of them just didn't think it was, the right thing to do. But we did have the ability in our team. We developed this. And you can't pull this lever all too many times as a leader, but you can say, I can see that we're not all going to agree here. I'm not going to get a 20-person consensus, but we can disagree, but then we have to commit. And this is one of those moments. I've made the call, and this is what's happening. And, and they got on board with it. They had the capability, they had the culture, with everything that we'd built up to that point, the operational excellence, and just, their capability was, unbiased, of course, but I would say it was above the average of the rest of all the teams in this race. My team were the one that were best placed to be able to take on this challenge of sailing the boat safely, no longer racing, that pressure's removed, but sailing the boat safely to San Francisco on their own, with their skipper not too far away. But
how far away? Are you still visible?
We'd still probably not, no, but we'd be within the range of our radios, which was important. So we could always be in constant communication. So I'd be sort of sailing the boat remotely, if you like. But it'd still be their hands, and they're entirely trusted to do the right thing. And so that's what we did. I made the transfer. And that was quite a heart-wrenching moment, really, for me. Again, having to find that balance between what my team needed to see. Hugs, words of encouragement, you can do this, just look after yourselves. And, how I'm really feeling inside, quite conflicted. And I step across onto the other boat, and the Japanese Coast Guard then arrived and evacuated the injured guy and took him off. Now I've got this new team, my step crew. I didn't even know their names. I was like, hey, hi, how you going? And, they'd all been firing on adrenaline after the accident, all starting to crash. And we had to turn things around because the next one of these big storms was like 24, 28 hours away. So, like I said, the rest of the fleet, they race on ahead of us, give us their best wishes, of course. My two boats now, we sort of turn our bows eastward and start sailing to get to San Francisco. Just a new mission, arrive safely, no more injuries, no more damage, and with confidence high. And that was enough for right now. And it was all going well. The next 10 days or so, just sticking together, sailing, slow, conservative, but safely. But then we faced the big one. The hurricane force winds weather system that we'd sort of been fearing from the start. It was bearing down on us. You could see it on the synoptic charts, getting bigger and bigger. And these weather systems, they're hundreds of miles across it. They're too big to sort of avoid or steer out the way of. They sort of come over the top of you. Biggest, most fierce weather any of us has seen. And I had two boats.
Brendan, the skipper on the boat that you've now left, your original boat, how much experience did he have?
He wouldn't mind me saying this, he was my oldest crew member, 63 with a hip replacement, but he'd done a lot of sailing before. But more so than that, he had the right temperament. he had the absolute trust of everyone on board. A great natural communicator, and yeah, just someone who was Mr. Reliable, if you like. So yeah, he was sort of the natural choice, really, to take on that sort of temporary skipper role and be the communicator of the strategy that I would still be overall in charge of, but he'd be the person that just made sure everything happened kind of the way we had done. There wasn't anything, a radical departure. It would just be to maintain the safe, high-performing way we've done all our maneuvers and keep the watches rolling as we had done right from the start. So yeah, it was the right choice for that. But a responsibility that, he didn't want, he again reluctantly accepted because of the circumstances we were in. But yeah, it's not really what he signed up for when he got on the boat. And he was thanked profusely at the end for stepping up into that role, of course, by everybody. But yeah, we were in our hurricane, and yeah, that was a real moment of reckoning. And honestly, I'll never forget as the sun went down, and the violent crescendo of these weather systems always comes in the middle of the night. As the sun went down, the feeling, it's a real icy feeling of fear inside, and I got this feeling. Maybe you could call it imposter syndrome, but this feeling that I sort of said to myself, like, you've been cruising, mate, your whole career. It's just been fair winds and thin ice and good luck, and it's sort of everything's gone your way. Tonight is when it gets real, and someone else is going to pay the butcher's bill, not you. And it's because of the decisions you've made, and you're in charge of these two boats now. Yeah, and as a sailor, there's a lot of humility you've got to have, because the ocean's this huge, powerful force, and it's orders of magnitude beyond your control, and it'll sort of do what it wants with you. And yet you always know that at any moment it can sort of reach up and take something. But in moments like that, you really feel the threat implied there. And it was just about doing everything by the book. It was just managing, the training kicks in, if you like, and you're just steering these boats, minute by minute, hour by hour, getting through things, keeping everything safe, minimal sail up now, just enough to keep the boat sort of surging forward and not letting the rolling waves crash into the back of the boat, turn it sideways or roll it over, and it was survival conditions.
And how long did this last for? Where you're having to stay awake and you must be rushing with adrenaline at this point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're absolutely going for it. And I would say the real height of it, probably about 8 hours. So it's not days and days. These weather systems, they move fast. They hit you quick, but then they're past you quick.
That's still a long time to be in that heightened state of
100%. And then to make matters worse, in the middle of the night, we get an unscheduled satellite phone call on our phone, and it's the race office, the HQ back here down in Portsmouth, and they tell me that one of the other boats, who's in the worst of this hurricane now, has just triggered their emergency beacon. So sort of beacon, sort of about that size these boats have, and a little aerial on top, and you trigger it in like dire straits circumstance. It's called an EPIRB. It talks to the satellites and basically triggers a big international rescue effort. Doesn't say what the problem is, just says this is where we are, our location, everyone come rescue us. And they'd set theirs off, and they couldn't be reached by radio, they couldn't be reached by satellite phone. So it leads to some pretty dire conclusions. Ships had been tasked to steer towards this pinging beacon, and a search and rescue plane was flying out of Alaska. And we were told, my two boats, because we were still behind this boat, so we could reach them more safely than another boat having to turn around. We were still upwind of them. And so we were told to divert our course and steer and sail towards this. It was just a pinging beacon. And by the time that we arrived with them, thank goodness, still a boat attached to them, but another competitor of ours called California, they'd been dismasted. So the whole boat was hit side on by a big wave and rolled right upside down, held there for about 40 seconds before, the keel on the bottom of the boat, which is most of the weight, means it'll always flip back up the right way. But the mast, which, isn't designed to withstand that kind of force, it just buckled, snapped in the rollover. So when it came back up, the mast is hanging down over the side of the boat. Their crew had to leap into action and saw through all the rigging and cuddle the ropes and jettison it to sink. So now they don't have a rig, they can't sail. All they have is their diesel. The boats all have an engine inside. And so that was their only means of motoring. Still 2,000 miles, and they don't have enough fuel in their tanks to motor that distance. So the plan comes together between all the stakeholders ashore and ourselves, and we work out that if California joined my convoy of 2 boats, because we're already sort of stapled together anyway, and we resupply them with all of our diesel from our 2 vessels and give it to them, it would give them the range to run their engine and motor the rest of the way there. So they fall into formation, and now I'm responsible for 3 boats.
Oh my God.
See, just as I was looking for. And so that's what we did. You know, they were there in the middle, my boat, Spirit of Australia in the lead, California in the middle, Hull and Humber at the back. And it was about 10 more days, and we motored to, got them there safely.
So, Brendan, just a question. With that boat, the one that keeled over, any injuries? What?
There was a couple of bad injuries. Yeah. So there was a crew member who was evacuated onto a sort of container ship who'd rendezvoused with them. That was before we arrived with them, and that could get him to the United States for treatment. Yeah, he hit his face quite badly, but he was all right in the end. You know, he made a full recovery, and in fact he met his crew in San Francisco, and I think he carried on with the rest of or he rejoined their team a little while later. But yeah, I mean, it could easily have been a fatality though, you know. So it was just very lucky.
Sounds dreadful. How do you transfer fuel from one vessel to another?
We had we just put them in these sort of plastic sort of jerry cans, containers, and tie them all together with a float. Basically go ahead of them, drop it in the water, they'd cook it, pull it up, and then just return the empties to us, and we just carried on doing that for the next 10 days. Yeah, so we arrive in San Francisco, and amazing sight as you approach it from the ocean, big Golden Gate Bridge and harbour opening. It was a golden evening, it was lovely. And we sort of, now California being the home boat, sponsored boat, lots of Californian people on board, and a large media interest surrounding this ordeal they've been through. They were sort of escorted under the bridge and into the harbour, and there were like family reunions and all that sort of Hollywood stuff. And my 2 boats, we ghost under the central span of the Golden Gate. And I'll never forget that feeling at that moment. And it was like the relief. The shoulders had been tensed up for the last 30 days, kind of relaxed. You know, I knew we were safe. And I was overwhelmed with pride, honestly. Real pride. Pride in not in myself, but in the step crew on Hull and Humber. Lovely new cast of characters I'd gotten to know, and you know, we found great affection for them, of course. And I'd like to think I'd helped rebuild their confidence up to the point where they could onboard their new permanent skipper, who was recruited while all this was carrying on, and it joined them for the rest of the trip. But then when I was reunited with my team, and in this lovely reversal, kind of pulled back up onto our boat together and sort of welcome back. It was one of my happiest and most cherished memories. This whole thing, seeing everyone again, and thinking, you just look at them, you know, they're not sort of burly SAS commandos. They're just ordinary folks, man, and they have achieved something, kept each other safe, and fulfilled that promise to each other. And I was just thinking of the words they said to each other, the actions they took for each other, the looks they would have given each other when they were in like crisis mode. Yeah. And just, to know that it was what we'd built up to that point is what allowed them to, you know, survive that extreme.
I'm thinking about the other person that you left in charge of your vessel.
Yeah.
63 years old, and how he would have had to manage through the weather that you've described. That's no easy feat. That's insane that he's had to do that.
But he did it. Everyone pulled together, and it's the boat. The boat looks after each other. It looks after you. They're over-engineered bits of kit, so you've just got to keep. Basically, your job is to just keep the long axis of the vessel, the 20-meter long axis, pointing down the waves, and not let it turn side on. Really, so you make sure that the people steering are, you know, changed out very regularly, because it's a very heavy sort of job steering the boat at the wheel. And just making sure the sort of safety procedures, everyone was doing everything by the book, and it sort of ensuring that. But yeah, he stepped up. But here's the thing: when you're at sea, there's no there is no out. There's no kind of time
That's
out.
what I mean. That's what freaks me out.
Sort of reassess this situation. You just have to act, and you have to do it. And the whole crew, they stepped up massively.
In that situation, that's where the ultimate survival mechanism kicks in, because you've got no choice.
Yeah.
Like you've said, you're out at sea. There is no timeout.
No. And I think, and I suppose a meta theme of the whole race is that I think we only learn things about ourselves sometimes when we're put in those, maybe not life and death survival situations, but there's not all that many times in our nice, normal, comfortable lives, which is a good thing, that we're faced with this kind of experience. But when you go through it and survive it, come out the other side of it, I think everyone certainly learned that they're stronger and more capable than they think they are. I think all of us, we tend to downplay what we can endure and what we can get through and our own resilience. And then when we're really tested and there's no time out, you are against the rock face and you have to act, and you've got other people who are relying on you and you're relying on them, just what people are capable of. And you take that forward, I think, into life. And that's something that I think everyone who does that race comes away with. Most people come away with a feeling that I'm stronger and more capable and more resilient than I believed I was.
So let's say one of your children turned 17.
Yeah.
Would you support? I don't know. Is daughter, son?
Either. Well,
Okay.
I've got one of each. But if they turn 17 and said I'd like to do the clip around the world race, put the money issue to another side. But I would say wholeheartedly, 100%, I would love you to do it. Yeah, absolutely. I think the perception of risk is, in terms of just statistical deaths, shall we say, I'm taking more risk driving around the M25 to get here than I am on a sailing boat in the Southern Ocean. But it's that perceived versus actual risk. It's that feeling of I'm in control of all the variables, on the road, when really you're not. But the perception is you are. Out there, you just, it seems a lot more scary. But I think the numbers don't necessarily back that up. But life is risk, and I think we don't want to take sort of silly, unnecessary risks. But I think doing something like this is a life-defining thing, and maybe how you approach risks in the future would be defined by the experiences you've had by doing something like this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So was San Francisco the final destination?
No, we sail all the way around the world, and we end up right back here where we started in the UK. So I got back onto my boat in San Francisco, and it was interesting and a reflection that the team had. I'll be honest, when I rejoined her, a little bit nervous.
Because you were nervous?
Yeah, because it was like, well, they really have proven they can do everything without me. Like when I rejoined them, what's my role here now? And they said it to me like this. They said, we can sail the boat without you, but we can't race the boat without you. That's the bit I had. And that's where I need to be laser focused. And I tell you, from San Francisco, we cleaned up. We won race after race. We won the next 3 races back to back. It was, and by the end of the race, we'd won it by this huge margin. So the rest of the race was relatively incident free, and it was our time to shine.
I'm interested in knowing what the effect was on the relationship with you and the rest of the crew when you got back on at San Francisco.
I think some of them had a hard time. They still, we got away with it, if you like, but they still didn't agree it was the right thing to do. But we survived. It was okay. Yeah, I'd say it strengthened a lot of relationships. Certainly, they welcomed having me back on board, which was nice. But yeah, we went back into performance mode and took all those learnings from, I suppose, just safely crossing the North Pacific, and the ownership that they took, the sort of delegation that they took to another level, and just the sort of operational capability. We fed that back into the way we worked and raced, and our performance sort of took off from there.
So now tell me about the rest of the leg from San Francisco onwards.
Well, really, it was glory days from there on. You know, there were no other huge incidents on the race. We sailed from there down through the Panama Canal, which is just wonder of the world, absolutely incredible feat of engineering, through the canal, and then north to Jamaica, New York, Nova Scotia, and then back across. Quick stop in Cork in Ireland, and then round to Hull, where the race started and finished. And yeah, so we did it, and we won it in the end by a big old margin. And you know, we crossed the final finish line. We celebrated because we'd done what we set out to do in the end. We'd kept everyone safe. Everyone was there, ready to go back to their families, who were sort of right there on the harbour wall. You know, you can see it. And I think an observation that a lot of people had as we finished this race up was, you know, I think seafarers from the dawn of time over romanticize it, but you know, you set out into the ocean, into the unknown with this sort of flame of adventure kind of burning inside of you. Seek new lands, seek new experiences, but you spend enough time out at sea, like deep ocean, as you described. And you're in a very hostile environment. You know, without a boat, you don't survive long at all. And that flame of adventure kind of fizzles out after a while, and it's sort of replaced by the sort of yearning for home. You know, you want to be home. You want to be back with the people that mean the most to you, and just really embrace those kind of relationships. And by the end, we were all ready for the race to be over. You know, it was sad for everyone as we scattered to the winds and everyone goes back to their lives and their families in the four corners of the world. But yeah, it was the right natural kind of time for the experience to come to an end. But yeah, we celebrated. We kept everyone safe. We looked after the vessel. It was in good shape to go into its next adventure, and we won it in the end. So you know, I've never met anyone who doesn't like winning. So yeah, that was a big goal ticked as well.
A few questions that come to mind. What were your key leadership takeaways from that experience? You spoke about trust. You spoke about communication. How would you summarize what were the key leadership requirements that you would have had and your team in order to achieve what you achieved and also survive what you survived?
I reckon there was a few. There was one, you know, the mood shadow and the attitude shadow. That was a big one. You know, as a leader, you've always got to be mindful of how you show up. Your energy becomes the energy of your team. Your attitude becomes their attitude. And you've got to keep the belief, even if maybe it's wavering a little bit inside, because that's what people need to hear from you in those moments. Creating, you know, understanding that there's a statistical inevitability of failure, roadblocks, speed bumps, problems, catastrophe, you know, on any adventure in life or something like this. It entails risk, and it's how you deal with the setbacks and the failures and the disappointments. And if you can find a learning from those moments and a catalyst to change the way you work, to do something differently, to course correct, it's in how you handle those moments of adversity that are always where the outcomes of teams diverge. And so, yeah, that it's, you can't stop these things from happening, but it's how you deal with them, how you play the cards you dealt. That's where performance is kind of found or confidence lost. The other thing I'd say is, you know, the journey of leadership is one of letting go. It's like the journey of parenthood. You know, you've got kids who are teens, and they'll every single day they're less dependent on you than the day before. And I think there's a beautiful phrase where the journey of parenthood is one of, you know, teaching these people that you can't live without to live without you.
Yeah.
That hits me hard.
That hits me hard.
But you know, like leadership, you know, that. But the problem is, you've got to find that balance between, you know, sort of letting go and empowering your team and delegating them and creating ownership, but also that you're still ultimately accountable for whatever their output is. And if things go wrong, it's still kind of on you. So it's finding that balance, but ultimately it should be one of letting go, of stepping back, being less operational as you give them the confidence and the training and the upskilling and the responsibility and checking that everything's being done in the right way, but you sort of taking these gradual backward steps and allowing them to stand to their full height. But it's all too easy to kind of stay in that micromanager controlling mode, telling yourself, well, if you want something done, you've got to do it yourself. It's just faster if I do it anyway, and blah, blah, blah. And you just stay stuck in that super operational mode. And you'll always feel like everything hinges on you. You can't go off and have a relaxing holiday because, you end up overworking yourself. Founder's syndrome, they call it. But yeah, it was for me a journey of understanding that those backward steps are going to probably mean you feel a little less validated. It's quite a validating feeling when you're being that super directive leader in charge of everything. You're calling all the shots, all decisions rest on you. And, you're very clear about where you add the value. In the same way as a parent of a very small child, you'll never feel more purposeful in your life than in those moments because you're just so needed. And as you sort of take those backward steps as a leader and your team sort of need you less, I think I certainly at times felt like I feel a little less validated. I feel a little less motivated. Not that I'm a sort of megalomaniac that needs to feel in charge at all times, but it's something that makes you work harder and it makes you give more of yourself. And as a team sort of gain this capability and start really doing things on their own without you, because you've given them that decision-making, autonomy. Yeah, I remember feeling a little like I was missing something that keeps me going, keeps my motivation burning. But I just had to have a good old look in the mirror and go, that's the key. That's the journey. And you've got to be okay with that. Derive your satisfaction, as in parenthood, from seeing this team do it on their own. And knowing, it was your work collectively that got them to that point to stand to their height. But to be okay with not feeling, overall in charge and calling all the shots all the time, unless it's a crisis. And of course, it's appropriate to jump in those moments.
Yeah, of course. Are the crew members still in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had reunions and never every single person together all in one place. But yeah, everyone's still in touch. And I would say for me personally, and it's probably true for most of them as well. You come away from something like this, 3 or 4 friends, like friends for life. Everyone else is sort of a friendly acquaintance who you're very happy to sort of you stay in touch with, and when you can fall back into conversation with very easily. And there's probably a couple of people who you're pretty happy to never see again. Such is life,
Yeah.
44 randomly selected people put together on one of these boats. You're not going to be besties with everyone at the end.
44 people per boat, did you say?
44 people in each team. There's only 20 on the boat at any given.
Right. So they're changing over at the various stops, are they?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I had 10 who did the whole lot. They were my round the world crew, consistent workforce, if you like. And then the other 10 came and went as they'd signed up for just different sections of the race.
Okay. What about the crew members from the other vessel that you helped out? Are you in touch with them?
Again, sort of on social media. Yeah, but not. We don't get together and have sort of meetups or reunions or anything like that. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier on that when you ended this voyage, this competition, that you were really happy to be back home, amongst the people that you loved most.
Yes.
What was the impact on the relationship with those people after this experience?
It was great, coming back. You only miss your water when you're dry, right? So when you're away at sea and you're away from family, you come back with a newfound appreciation for everything. I would say it's improved the relationship I've had with all of my family. Parents are proud. That was lovely to sort of see them. And I think when they heard the news that I was moving to the other side of the world from Australia to become a professional sailor, they were a bit, okay, well, look, go and give it a go, and good luck to you. And then to have achieved this, that was a lovely moment for them, and something I hope I can experience in some kind of way with my own children. And the rest of my friends, it was fantastic. But I think the thing that I realized coming back from the race, the aftermath, I guess I cut the story there at the finish line. You win it, you get everything you want. The postscript to the story isn't quite so pretty. I got depressed after the race. It didn't. I had pretty big come down, if you like, and you think in a way, well, you've got no excuse because you're the dog who's finally caught the car. You've achieved everything that you set out to do. But it was for me a big lesson about that hedonic treadmill. However good things get, eventually your happiness, your satisfaction always sort of just returns to the baseline, if you like. And yeah, I came back down hard after the race, after that sort of peak experience, and then returning to, I suppose, normal life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I wasn't ready. And I think I didn't do enough to keep myself busy, and I just I thought I just need to rest now and just recuperate. But I think I really should have been keeping more busy and have another project to move into. So yeah, it took about 6 months to kind of come back out of that and move on to the next sort of phase of the career. But yeah, it's certainly something that I caution all skippers who do the race subsequently to just always, you sort of think of the end of the race as just that's it, but to even be planning in the early stages, have some ideas of what you're going to do next and something to move on to, so you don't end up just ruminating and sort of feeling like you're really missing something with nothing. And that support network that's been so close and all around you, and you lose that, and yeah, you find yourself pushing a supermarket trolley around Tesco's in this sort of slightly surreal feeling of what's my life all about now.
Because the difference is massive to go from the level of purpose you've got on that voyage, that competition, to then go back to where you've not even got anything planned that you're working towards, a goal, a purpose, an outcome. That's going to have a negative effect, I would imagine, because you're going from one extreme right the way down to the other extreme. So having something important to work towards, like you mentioned, I would imagine would be of paramount importance.
Absolutely. So that's a caution, but it's, again, I take that life lesson forward that, sort of nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems, things just tend to return, whatever happens, good or bad, your happiness tends to sort of reset back to the ambient level, and just to know that it's going to happen. And yeah, I think I've never felt quite so purposeful as I did on that race. And then, with having little ones, having children as well, which is my joy in life now through them, of course. But yeah, you don't want, when you've got something, a real mission and a real purpose that you're driving forward, and a big goal and a group of people that are around you, the trappings of life that we can become quite engrossed in. I think I've become a lot less materialistic as a result of having done something like this. The real satisfying moments in life are from the experiences that you have and, the people that you surround yourself with.
What a fascinating story, Brendan. It's been lovely having this conversation with you. Really appreciate you making the effort to come down. Where can people find out a bit more about you if they want to engage with you? Do you have a website?
Yeah, absolutely. So look me up on LinkedIn, Brendan Hall. The picture of me wearing a sort of red sailing coat, and my website is Brendan with an AN at the end -hall.com. Keynote speaker. I do workshops. I do live sailing experiences. I do teamwork simulations, but all things leadership and teamwork. And there's a book out there as well. You've heard the best bit today, but yeah, it's in all the normal places. It's called Team Spirit.
Appreciate that. Thanks for coming down, Brendan.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed that conversation. Hit like and subscribe, and drop a comment down below. And yeah, thanks very much. See you later.